Hey everybody, welcome back to part 2 of this build, working on the StewMac Swell Drive pedal. The last one was full of adventures, so you might want to check that one out first. We've got some trials and tribulations behind us, and we'll see what lies ahead. The soldering iron is hot, so let's push forward and get this project wrapped up. Alright, so it's been a few days, a few emails with StewMac, and we have a new package from them. So I already looked through this because I didn't want it to be wrong again. And what we have is our missing 470K resistor, which they insisted on sending, which is great. But more importantly, our 5v6 diode. Hopefully you can see this here. So, long story short, trust your instincts, I guess. The thing that they had sent that they said was a 5v6 diode was incorrectly labeled in their system as a 560K resistor. So, it was just a wrong part. Those little resistors, I guess, are little like 1/8 watt resistors. So, this should be the last part we need. The other thing that piece of information that we got from them is that the pot, which pot is this? The sensitivity pot should be the A100K, the audio taper, marked with A100. So that is marked. It was correct in this one graphic showing the pots, but in the bill of materials at the start of the guide, it's labeled as a B100K. So that's an easy mistake to make, but the true test will be, do they update the guide to make sure that it's correct? I've made them aware, and I think that's kind of the real test of what my opinion of a company putting kits together is not do they make mistakes, but when they're made aware of their mistakes, do they adjust them? And if they do, that's awesome. And you can kind of trust that they've listened to other people too. So we're gonna go backward a little bit and put in this diode, which I will look over the PCB, but I think it's the last part, but we'll make sure. Let's do a little cleanup first. All right, so we're going to move on to the LED, which requires us to take everything back out. The instructions for LED orientation were a little confusing, so I think the right thing to do is to check the PCB. The shorter negative lead should go to the eyelet labeled K, and the longer positive lead goes to A. Now, the guide is written assuming you've already got your enclosure painted and you're installing the board and LED for the last and only time, but since I painted mine later, I had to take it back out, which made it a little tricky to press the LED back in when I was done and get it in there nice and firmly. So if I had to do it again, I'd probably just wait to solder the LED until the end. So if it was difficult to tell what I'm doing here, I could have put some heat shrink on before installing the LEDs, but since it's hard to tell what length they're going to end up, it's hard to know what length of heat shrink to put on there. So what I've done, there may be a better way, but this should work. I've put a little piece of electrical tape stuck to itself around one lead of the LED, and that's going to prevent it from ever shorting against the other lead of the LED. And then I've just put a little bigger piece of electrical tape on the bottom of the PCB, just in case this LED ever were to touch the bottom of the PCB, should prevent it from shorting, or at least help prevent it. So the only tricky thing about having taken this back out is you're supposed to kind of shove this plastic plug into the underside of the bezel in the case to get it to stay in place. So it could be a little tricky to get that pushed in and everything else in place, but you know, I think it's worth it. I'd rather have the LED not go in all the way or have to finagle with that a little bit than have it shorting out. So these are TS jacks, or tip sleeve jacks. So this is our sleeve connection. So when the cable comes in, actually, let's grab one. It's easier to show. I always think this is kind of cool to look at. So we've got a guitar cable here, regular TS 1/4 inch cable, and in our jack, hopefully you can see this, as you push in the guitar cable to the jack, it's like a spring-loaded little lock that fits into the tip of the cable. So this is your tip connection, and it connects to the tip, as you would expect. And then this here on the inside, that connects to the sleeve here. So when you hear TS, or tip sleeve connection, that's literally what it means. It's just mechanically made to touch the tip and the sleeve only, and they're isolated from one another. You'll see me struggling here a bit to get the jacks in. These holes were too tight to fit the jacks through. I was able to get them in here by kind of screwing them in and cutting threads in the enclosure with the jack, but I ended up using a 45-degree chamfer bit chucked in a drill before finishing to clean up the holes a touch. I also found the jack wiring a little unclear in the guide. It refers to soldering the left or right tab or eyelets rather than actually labeling what goes where on the PCB, and oddly it kind of references that assuming you have the enclosure open side down like you'd use it while playing, not the position you've had it in the whole rest of the guide. So just be careful and triple check everything as you're soldering here. All right, so it looks like we have everything soldered. StewMac gives a little final look at what everything should look like, which is an easy way to check your orientations and make sure you've got things soldered to the right tabs. It's really nice that they do that. Sometimes you just have to scour through step by step and try to look at everything individually, but sometimes you'll catch something you missed in this step. So I think we're all soldered up, and we're going to put on the bottom and let's test it out. Wait, I already got... I think I predicted this earlier. I was going to forget, right? You were supposed to remind me, but that's okay. Almost forgot our IC here. TLO 71. Oh boy. Off-the-shelf ICs have their legs splayed out a bit, so you just want to gently bend them to sit at 90 degrees before installing them like you see here. Align the notch or dot on the IC with the notch on the socket and PCB, make sure all of the legs are lined up with the socket, and press it in. Just YouTube video stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice setup.
Thank you very much.
Hi, welcome to McDonald's. Will you be using your mobile app today?
So that is the Swell Drive pedal from StewMac. Hopefully you can ignore my playing, just kind of messing around trying to wrap my head around the best way to play to a pedal like this. I'm sure you could hear certain types of playing, single note lines especially, felt really nice and natural and did what I would expect this pedal to do. Louder signals and chords, it was harder to get it dialed in to have both a noticeable swell and not also get like a weird fizzy tail on the end of the playing. I think it really needs to be tailored to your guitar. I don't think you could just plug any guitar in and have it behave the same. You'll definitely need to adjust the knobs, if not also the trim pot inside. I could see this being really cool on synthesizers, something where you have a really consistent attack volume. This could be a cool way to add an extra swell stage to that kind of thing. Some aesthetic things. This might not matter to you at all, but if you're really picky, I thought it was worth mentioning. These stickers, they have a radius for these labels up here, and when I was placing them on during the finishing stage, I didn't have the electronics in, so it was just the bare case and the labels, and I placed these so the radius was concentric to the holes for the pots, and in the logical place for them. And I got this sneaking suspicion that they were not going to be cleared by the knobs, that the knobs would cover them a bit. And I tested it, and sure enough, that was true. So I ended up having to bump up these labels a little bit, which is why it has kind of a little bit of a gap in the center of the label. Looks a little strange. I also had an issue. The washer of the output jack is covering the bottom of the label, a little bit over here too with the input jack. The type size is just too large here, and this is too tight of a radius to fit with clearance around these knobs. So very easy graphic design fixes. StewMac, I'm sure they designed this on the computer and they didn't print one and print the labels and check it out with these knobs. So it's an easy mistake to make, but also an easy thing to fix. So hopefully StewMac will do that. Another aesthetic thing is these are stickers, these labels, and you can, I'm sure you can see, hopefully, you can see the edges of these, and this is with a couple clear coats over top of the sticker. I would love to see these be water slide graphics. If you're not familiar with them, they are printed labels that are really thin. You soak them in water, and while they're wet, you position the label, and then you dry it in place with a paper towel. It sticks in place, put a couple clear coats over it, and the edges just disappear. It like embeds the label into the clear coat. This is what's used on the logos on the headstocks of guitars, and is used on a lot of professionally sold pedals too. And I'm sure, water slide graphics are tricky. They're very thin. They can tear, they can fold. I'm sure that StewMac just decided stickers were the way to go. For people who might be building a pedal for the first time, you don't want to also tack on the learning curve of water slide graphics, but it just makes it kind of stand out as being DIY. A lot of people building this might want that. You want people to look at this and be like, wow, you made that yourself, and then they hear it and it sounds great. On the other hand, some people might want it to look like a professional pedal. If you can't afford the real thing, or another model, but you can build this, you don't necessarily want it to scream DIY. So if that's the look you're going for, I would print your own water slide graphics, or etch it, or do some other fun method. But just something to note. So that is the Swell Drive kit. If you followed this far, I had some difficulties with this build. There were some missing parts and miscommunications, and some things in their assembly guide that are just labeled wrong. I don't fault them for that. I know it is difficult to put a kit together. It seems like it would just be taking a regular off-the-shelf product and then just selling the parts for it. But to design a guide, to get batches of kits with all the right parts for everything, it's really difficult. What I am looking out for is that they fix these issues. So they have the information from me, or they may have already had that from other people. I'm looking out for, will they fix those issues in the future? That to me is the way that a company can show how much they care about the satisfaction of their customers. So StewMac is so great in so many other aspects. Their support and their tool design and their website, their shipping, everything is so excellent. I just want them to make this product up to par with their standards. So yeah. So again, if you followed this far, I really appreciate it. I know this was a long one. I'm still trying to figure out the right way to make this type of video. If you build one of these in the future, let me know. Give me an update. Tell me if you have these issues, or if StewMac has improved them. Let me know if there's other things you would like to see built, or other ideas for videos. Please leave a comment. I read every single one. Like and subscribe. Do all those things. It really helps me out, and it's awesome to be able to interact with everybody and get everybody's feedback. So until the next one, thanks for watching.